welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Today I woke up just feeling so excited. I really wanted to make a video showing you guys all the books that I haven't read yet. There are way too many. I really do love to read, and I guess this video is really showing you my secret shame, but I have a problem, and it's called buying books that I have no intention of reading for the foreseeable future, but will read, just not now. Anyway, maybe this is the motivation I need to start reading some of these books, but if you've read any of these, please comment down below and let me know which ones they are. I want to know which ones I really should be reading first out of this large pile that I have. So without further ado, I've got a lot of books on this cart and sitting next to me on the floor, and I guess we'll see the books that I haven't read yet. Please don't judge me. Fair warning, there are a lot of books here. First up, we have A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is the fourth book in a trilogy, I believe, that I'm reading. I could be wrong. It's called A Court of Thorns and Roses. Very good series by Sarah J. Maas, if you guys want to check that out. And this is supposedly like the epilogue novella that comes after the original series. And then I believe there's a fifth book coming out that's sort of a new series set in the same world with the same characters, so looks like my book buying binge is not over. Second, we have Insta Style by Teza. I got this book during quarantine with the intention of reading it, but I still haven't read it, so we'll see when and how that happens. But I've heard there's like a lot of interesting tips on like what to do on Instagram, which if you know me at all, I'm obsessed with Instagram, so that's perfect. Ooh, all right. Please don't judge me, Lord of the Rings, on this next one. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. I always meant to read this because I read and loved The Hobbit growing up, but I just haven't gotten around to it. I also bought this on audiobook, so I should be able to like actually find the time, but I just haven't found the time to dive into this beautiful series. I remember my sister read the first one and told me that the first chapter was almost 50 pages, and at the time, 14-year-old me was very daunted, so I just still have not read this trilogy to this day, and it's been sitting on that cart ever since. Next one is another classic, A Catcher in the Rye. I still haven't read this. I've read about the first 10 pages or so, and I've always meant to. It's just every time I start it, there's another book that comes up and I just have to read it. It's a struggle for sure, but this is actually one of my favorite book covers. I have no idea what it's meant to represent, but it's so beautiful. Next, we have Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welsh, I believe. Yes. And I've always meant to read this. I finally got it during quarantine as well on another book buying binge. And hopefully I'll be able to get to this really soon because it's actually part of the book club I have going on with my best friends called the Tea Time Literary Club. Super excited to dive into this one. I'm feeling the shame, and we're basically not even halfway through. Next, we have Blue Lily, Lily Blue, and the Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. You'll learn throughout this video that I can't say the last names of authors. I read the first two books in this series and they were so good, but I took a break for a minute to read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I still haven't gotten back to these, but I totally intend to because they're so magical. I love them so much. Next one is a classic some of you might know from the YA genre, The Selection by Kira Cass, which to this day I still haven't read, and everyone tells me I would love it, so definitely on the list. And I love that cover, like, wow, yeah. Another thing you'll learn is that part of the reason that I buy so many books is because I'm obsessed with beautiful covers. Next up we have Emma by Jane Austen, and I still haven't read it to this day. I've seen almost every film adaptation of Emma, but I haven't read the original book. Blasphemy, I know. But I intend to read it as soon as I possibly can. It's just such a really cool story, and I really love Jane Austen's writing style. She has a way with words. Next up on the shelf is Circe, which I actually got on a trip with my friends to Portland, Oregon. We went to this bookshop called Powell's Bookshop. It's a really cool place. They sell like lots of used and old books and also new books, and this was one of them. And I've always wanted to get this book. I've seen it everywhere, I just never have. I'm really into Greek mythology. I don't know if any of you are, but I know the story of Circe from the myths, and I'm really interested to see how this author takes it to sort of a narrative level. It'll be really interesting. Next up we have The Little Book of Huga, and actually I technically have read this one. I got a copy at the library one time and read most of it. It was really interesting. It had like a lot of really good information for people that struggle with anxiety, honestly, on how to really make a positive living space that really suits your needs using the philosophy of Huga. But I really want to dive into it more, start like actually like marking and like bookmarking spots that are really important to me, or things I could, you know, write down and use. It's just like a really good self-help book in a way, and it's so cute. The illustrations inside are like adorable. Next up is a book I got as a Christmas present from a friend. This is The Invisible Life of Addie Lore. Lore, I think, by V.E. Schwab. And I'm really excited to read this one. Apparently the main character is my exact age, which is 23. So that's part of the reason she gave it to me, and it's apparently just a really good book that speaks to a lot of people, so I'm really excited. I've seen this around a lot lately. Shout out to Hallie, thank you again. Speaking of book recommendations by friends, I have a friend, Zoe, who actually introduced me to this series, and I bought the first book months and months ago. I just still haven't gotten around to reading it, but it's The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I cannot wait. It sounds like such a fun series. And I believe a prequel came out kind of recently, so it's still very relevant. On that note, another fantastic prequel, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I pre-ordered this book with the intention of reading it right when it came out, and things happened, I didn't get around to doing it, and here we are. But I'm really excited to read this one. If you know me, you know I love the Hunger Games series, and I've been trying to avoid spoilers based on this book because I know it's about President Snow, and I'm so interested to see what happens with that story. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I'm gonna put this one on top of the pile. Next up, we have a classic, and that is Little Women by Louise May Alcott, and I know this is a classic that everyone has read, everyone and their mother, quite literally, but I just still haven't gotten around to reading it. It was never really a part of my childhood. I only saw the movies recently, and yeah, I just really wanted to finally read this apparent masterpiece of a book. I'm very excited. Next up, we have some poetry books, selected poems of Emily Dickinson, and then the poetry of Robert Frost, and I've read a few poems in each of these, but I haven't completed them, so that's why they're included in this list. But if you guys have any good poetry recommendations, definitely let me know, because I am for sure trying to get into that more. Next up is House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. Forgot that author name. This is apparently like a fairy tale retelling that's sort of eerie and magical, based on 12 Dancing Princesses, but I've also heard comparisons to Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid. So I've been really excited to read this. Definitely probably a summer read for me. We will see. I got it right when it came out and I never read it. I am feeling the shame. Next up is The Last Voyage of Poe Blythe by Ali Condi, actually, who wrote, I believe it was Matched. Anyway, I never read that series, heard it was good, but I definitely wanted to read this one. I read the description on the back while on a random trip to the bookstore and fell in love with it. And by the time quarantine hit, I was going to read it, but then I ended up going with another series instead. So it is high time I finally got around to this one. Nothing like a little tea to help you expose yourself about your life shame. Next up is a book that my sister recommended to me, and it's called Ayurveda, or The Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda. It's basically like a really cool guide that teaches you about the, I believe it is Indian philosophy of healing your mind, body, and spirit with different elements. It's actually really interesting. She was telling me about it when I saw her last. It's like good health meditation practices and morning routines. I'm really interested to finally read through this and maybe highlight some stuff. Next up is another book really dear to my heart, and that is Sunday, Sunday Maybe by Lauren Graham. Yes, you heard that correctly. I am a huge Gilmore Girls fan. Love Lauren Graham with everything. Lorelai Gilmore is my spirit animal, and Lauren Graham actually wrote this book. My sister gave it to me, I believe for my birthday last year, and I could not be more excited to read it because seriously, this woman is my life, and I can't wait to read a book actually written by her. I don't know why I haven't already read this. What's wrong? Next up is Reawakened by Colleen Hoke, and honestly, I love Egyptian mythology. I don't know if any of you have read the Kane Chronicles series by Rick Riordan. It's a great Egyptian mythology series by the same author who wrote Percy Jackson, but I've really been into Egyptian mythology in the past couple of years, and I really meant to read this book and just never did. Story of my life. But it's by that same author who wrote the Tiger's Curse series, which I heard really good things about. Never got around to that either, but I went ahead and bought this one. I believe it's a duology, maybe even a trilogy. You see Recreated is on the back. But anyway, yeah, I really wanted to read this. Don't know why I haven't yet. Here we have Aristophanes' Lysistrata and Other Plays. I'm super into Greek mythology, and I was listening to a podcast on the subject, and they recommended this book of old Greek plays that are translated in a very readable way, and I've always been curious to read what the old Greeks actually created. theater-wise. So I'm very interested to read this. It'll just have to be probably a beach read sometime. Okay, I'm having to rearrange these piles because they keep falling. Next up we have The Bird and the Blade by Megan Bannon, and this is actually another recommendation from my sister. She gave it to me because I used to be a librarian, and this author is actually a librarian, or at least she was when she wrote the book. And it's based on Mongolian folklore to my knowledge, and apparently it's just a really good standalone novel that she thought I would enjoy. One day I will get to it, I promise. And last out of the ones I have found currently in this house that I own, but certainly not least, A Discovery of Witches. This is a book by Deborah Harkness, I believe. It even has a TV show dedicated to it, and I still haven't read it. I've heard nothing but good things about this series. I believe some of my favorite actors are even in that TV show, but I've had this book since before they even announced the television show, and yet I still haven't read it. What am I doing with my life? I do not know. Apparently I spend way too much time rereading Harry Potter. That must be it. Anyway, now that I've exposed my secret shame to you, which book do you think I should read next? I'm almost done with the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I'm really interested to start, knocking out some of these books on my TBR. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know in the comments below. Also, if you haven't read any of these books, or you're interested in a few of them that you haven't read, so let me know in the comments below. It would make me feel less alone. Also, if you guys are wondering what tea I'm drinking, this is Wild Sweet Orange by Tazo. You can find it at Target. It's my favorite tea ever. And if you like my t-shirt, you can find that on my shop at Spellbound Style Co. So yeah, if you want to see more videos like this, click the subscribe button if you haven't already. It was so refreshing and fun to just wake up and just purely talk about books, and it's really motivated me to want to read a lot of the books that I've shown you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys really soon with a vlog. I'm going on a trip to the Wizarding World with my friends, and I can't wait. See you guys later. Bye.
Missing someone.